Namaskar and welcome to this conversation on quality of life in general and the $1 Project in particular. My name is Gaurav Rastogi. As you know, I'm the Dean at Hindu Community Institute. And this is a project that I will be working with you on. It's a project that I've been working on with the previous scholars for the last 2 years. And I look forward to a long life of debate, discussion, and articulation of this topic in the public sphere. So with that, this is going to be an interactive session. I am recording this for those that are not able to attend this live. And if you have questions or comments, feel free to share them. I'll give you we will wrap it up in an hour for sure, and preferably earlier. I will give you a brief overview of why this is important, what the project itself is, and what has been the progress on this thought process over the last couple of years. And then we will get into the specific action that we want to engage in this year. We have scholars here from the global cohort as well as the Australia and New Zealand cohort. So namaskar and welcome to all. And if you like, you can turn your video on. It's okay either ways. I do not mind it. I'm used to speaking to my screen, so it's not a problem. But if you're okay, if you're available, feel free to turn your camera on so I can see your faces. Ushaji, namaskar. You're not driving, so that's good. Okay, now it's so good to see everyone's faces. All right. So I'll begin with a long arc. Give me about 15 minutes to go through the arc before I get to the progress we've made so far. But before that, I'd like to talk to you about ideas themselves. Ideas have a way of shaping history. And all our history, everything that we know, all the world that exists, in many ways has been shaped by ideas. If you go to Newtonian physics, to whatever Einstein said, and the creation of the atomic bomb that came from that. Malakshmiji, I'm going to mute you. All right. Ideas can shape history. For example, if you look at how the idea that there is an Aryan invasion into India has shaped the history of India in the recent years, in the recent centuries, and continues to shape the argumentation in India now. And in fact, for those of us that have left India, it continues to chase us all around. The idea that diseases need drugs, this is a more relatively recent idea that medicines are the only cure for diseases. It's a recent idea, but it's an idea that has shaped the healthcare system, at least in the West, where it's driven around the delivery of drugs, medicinal drugs to people. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is enshrined into the American Constitution, and it's built into the American society at large. And that too is an idea. These are all ideas. Aryan invasion is an idea. That diseases need drugs is an idea. The pursuit of happiness is an idea. There is no God, but God is an idea, and it's an idea that has shaped civilizations for 2,000 years, that there is a way of exclusively defining God at the exclusion of every other possible definition of God, and that this one definition of God is the right one and everything else is false, is an idea. And this idea has shaped modern society. It shaped ancient society. It shaped history. Nietzsche said, Gott ist tot, which is God is dead, Nietzsche said 150 years ago. And that was an idea. And we saw what that idea unfolded into as it shaped an entire civilization. The idea that rationality has somehow overtaken the need to have a God to explain anything. These are all ideas. The sense I'd like to give you is that it isn't that ideas are ephemeral, weak little things. Ideas shape our society, they shape our history, they shape the kind of world we live in. And so if we need to influence the future, we need to work on ideas. That is the way this world works. And so in order to shape the future, we're going to have to invest ourselves into a few ideas that we believe will shape the future and in ways that we would like. And what are the ways we would like to shape the future? What is wrong with the world today? It's a world that is exceeding in standard of living. It's a world that is doing successfully in terms of technology and how technology is reshaping society. It's a world economically connected. It's a global world and so on. What's wrong with the world? And I think the answer to that is pretty obvious. What's wrong with the world is that it's shaped by post-Enlightenment European ideas of rationality and the fact that reason alone can explain everything, and that subjectivity and personal experience don't matter for much. And because of that, personal experience has been eliminated from decision-making, political decision-making, economic decision-making, and how companies work. And so that leads to what's wrong with the world. What's wrong with the world is, despite our material wealth, we are materially much better off than our forefathers and previous generations across the world. But spiritually, we are worse off by any token. There is a rise of loneliness across civilizations in the West. People are leaving their churches and their communities. People are feeling, lifestyle diseases are now 70 to 80% of the disease load in the West and in pretty much everywhere else as well. And so what gives? What's behind that? What's behind that is that the world is experiencing a high standard of living, but a poor quality of life. And that poor quality of life shows up everywhere, which is, I like to think of it, and I'd like to give you a very sweet metaphor. I'm going to mute. I'm going to give you a very sweet metaphor to describe, what's happening with this quality of life and standard of living problem, which is, think of it as the gulab jamun paradox, which is to say you have one gulab jamun and you're a happy camper. You have two gulab jamuns, you're happier than one gulab jamun, maybe not twice as happy. At three gulab jamuns, you're at your optimal happiness. And at this point, your happiness knows no bounds. And at the fourth gulab jamun being presented to you, you're beginning to get angry and somewhat frustrated. And at the fifth and sixth gulab jamun, you're really, really unhappy that this injustice is being done to you and you have to consume these silly gulab jamuns, and you hate the person that's offering you these gulab jamuns. You see what's happening there? There's a sort of a curve where there's unhappiness, happiness, happiness, peak happiness, and then unhappiness, unhappiness. There is a sort of a curve at which point more gulab jamuns do not bring you extra happiness. And that's the problem with the standard of life versus quality of living, which is higher standard of life doesn't necessarily imply a better quality of life. But what is a better quality of life? And that is where this civilization fails. We do not have words to explain what quality of life is. If I were to ask you this question, and I should have asked this question at the front end, but if I call you in the middle of the night and I ask you, hello, how are you doing? Your answer as a robot, very robotic, is going to be, I'm fine, thank you, how are you doing? Right? It's not a question we think about. It isn't a topic that we are trained ourselves to ignoring this topic of quality of life, right? And so we have become, as Sangeet ji is pointing out, extremely materialistic. Because we think that our success is measured in material terms, how big our house is, how fancy the car is, or how much money we have in the bank. Somehow we have dematerialized our own experience, or we have materialized our experience and dematerialized ourselves. So we don't have any way of accessing our inner state. So when I ask you how you're doing, we are all trained to say, I'm fine, thank you. I've had this many times where I'm not fine. I am sick. This was in Bangalore 3 weeks ago. I was nearly dead because of, I had a flu running through me. And I was in a hotel, unhappy situation. This is 4 a.m. And my colleague, I sent out a text saying, I'm not feeling well. My colleague calls me and says, how are you doing? And I'm fine, thank you. I'm dead, but I'm saying I'm fine, thank you. And then it struck me that I'm giving him a rote, unthinking answer. It's not the right answer, but I don't know better. Why don't I know better? Why don't you know better? Why doesn't anyone in the society and decision-making know better about how we're feeling, how our quality of life is? It turns out that the Hindu civilization, I'm sorry, I'm rambling through a long arc because I want to get to the research we've done so far. But the Hindu tradition, because we've been around for thousands of years, every tradition, every society finds out how to improve quality of life, but not many survive long term. So if you ask the Egyptians, you look at those beautiful pyramids, I'm pretty sure they knew what good quality of life is. I'm pretty sure the Celts and Picts also knew what good quality of life is. I'm pretty sure the Aborigines in Australia knew what good quality of life is, but those civilizations don't have too many people that speak for them, for the learning that they had, for the knowledge that they had. The Hindu tradition, I think, stands alone and luckily so, as a voice from the past that says, look, here's the accumulated wisdom around how we know what it means to live well. We know, why do we know this? Why do we, it's not only that we're Hindus and I'm being jingoistic. We know this because the Hindu yogis were specialists in the inner experience. They valued inner experience to the extent that Jagan Mithya, right? They said the world is unreal, the self is real, only the self is real, right? How did they got to a point where pure subjectivity, pure self is all there is. This entire universe ceases to exist at that point, and only the self is. So the yogis and our forefathers, ancestors in the Indian subcontinent, they specialized in the inner sciences, and they built very sophisticated models and ways of understanding and improving quality of life. But they don't speak to us in English. They don't speak to us in modern language. They don't speak to us in ways that we can communicate to our children or to our friends or to decision makers in society. And that's the project that we have at hand, which is we need to hear what we've been told and convert that into something that other people can understand, because ideas have life. Now, we've been working on this for 2 years, this idea of quality of life and improvement of it. And in my anticipation, this is an idea we will be working on for the next 20 to 60 years until it's fully articulated. And the fruits of our labors begin to show up in the society, where decision-making, culture, art, society, economics are all influenced by the ideas that we're discussing today. Because it takes that long for good ideas to germinate and percolate. We looked at the Gulab Jamun paradox. That's one way of understanding the quality of life. But there are more things. What is your perception of time? We are, of course, in the West, time poor. We are money rich and time poor, which is to say we're always short of time. This lack of time, this lack of access to the immediate time, that is that immediate moment that passed, this lack of connection with it means that we're always living in the past or the future. So practically, we are never living. This relationship with time plays a very important role in understanding and experiencing quality of life. And our yogis, and you can see my meditation seat right behind me, our yogis spent a lot of time thinking about this. How do I slow time? Not time, tick-tock time, but time, personal time. How do I slow my time of perception? How do I engage in the moment that is passing and another moment that is passing and yet another moment that is passing? How do I actually live and not postpone my living to some point in the future or some point in the past? And so time, for example, is a very important perception of time, is a very important thing. And of course, in the modern culture, we know that it is a mark of much pride, that if you ask somebody how they're doing, oh, I'm really busy. You know, they're not worth anything if they're not busy, right? And that is an idea. The fact that busyness corresponds to being happy or being in a state of bliss is a sort of an idea. It's the wrong idea. Being busy means nothing. Being needlessly busy means nothing. You've got to be engaged in something or the other. So time is another. I'll give you another. This need for freedom. We want to free ourselves. And in fact, if you look at research on burnout, psychologists say that burnout is experienced by employees. And if you read everything about the great resignation right now that's going on all around the world, people are feeling burnt out. Inability to manage or have control over their own time is a source of burnout, because lack of control over time, perceived control over perceived time leads to a sense of burnout, because you're no longer enjoying your work. Energy does not flow through your system. And so people feel burnt out. So being burnt out represents a low quality of life, you would agree. Now you come back to this question of control. We want to control our time. We want to control our experience. We want to control the activities in our schedule. But the tradition, in our tradition, says dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Moksha is freedom. And later in the HCI sessions, you're going to hear a very eloquent speaker talk about moksha and freedom. But that freedom, is it complete control or is it complete surrender? Isn't that something worth thinking about? Do we get freedom from completely controlling all the circumstances? Is that even possible? Or does that freedom come from complete surrender and letting everything that wants to flow to flow? We have to find out more. I'm giving you a sense of the sorts of things we discussed. Relationships. I read a book again by a person that says this whole loneliness and depression that's sweeping around through the world. His research, this book was a really interesting book. His research said that we have connection to ourselves, to our family, to our colleagues, to our work, to nature. All those connections are severed. And because those connections are severed and we live in this synthetic artificial world, we are essentially grieving for all the losses. The only time the symptoms of depression are allowed in modern psychology, from that book, I'm not a psychologist, but from that book, I understand the only time it's allowed to have those symptoms is when somebody is grieving for the death of a loved one. But we seem to perpetually be in a state of grief because, according to this book, we have lost the connection to ourselves, to our family, to our work, to meaning, to purpose, to nature. 9 connections this person lays out. Isn't that something we have something to say about? How can we restore those connections, those relationships we have to each other? So I've given you a few ideas. Gulab Jamuns is one, health is another. Is health about preventing disease, or is health a positive state of being? In the Hindu tradition, we use the word swastha, to be in the self, as a symptom of swastha, health, right? And so to be in the self is healthy, not the absence of disease. That's a negative indicator. A positive indicator is to be grounded in the self, to be centered. How do we become centered? So I've given you a list of things we worked on: money, relationships, surrender, time, santosha, satisfaction, money, health. These are all ideas, and I'll show you some more. So you can see that these ideas are important. We already know these are important. I didn't need to convince you that these are important, but they're not articulated well. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve. So over the last 2 years, the group has worked and we've listed a series of ideas, and we want to find out what we want to do now is take another step forward, which is to write published and publishable articles at the intersection of health, psychology, economics, religion, spirituality, as well as the new age. How do we write those articles? And you don't need to write for the New York Times or the Guardian or Washington Post. You can just write for yourself, for your neighborhood journal, for your your alumni association, or your local Indian magazine. It doesn't matter who you write for. What matters is that you publish. Why? Because these seeds will sow themselves into the public mind. I'll give you an illustration. Here is an article. It's in the Atlantic. Now you're seeing my screen, presumably. The Atlantic is a very well-reputed magazine. I enjoy reading the Atlantic, and this article is by Arthur C. Brooks, a very well-respected author. Now here's the headline. The headline is, of course, you go from 10 to 50, and here's an executive at the peak of their career, and they're looking at a precipitous decline in their career peak. And that's the thing, your professional decline is coming much sooner than you think. So prestigious journal, prestigious author, but I want to show you something interesting. What is the source of his ideas? I'm going to keep going. This is a fun article, you should read it, but I'll scroll down. One second. Okay. Kishorji's grandchild is expressing their quality of life. All right. So now I'm going to go down on this article and show you something really, really fun and interesting. So pardon me while I scroll. I'll get you to a mountain in South India, specifically in the city of Palakkad. So he goes through all this. He writes a long article, long article, and then he comes to this. He comes to Palakkad, and he describes the answer to the question in a conversation he had with a guru, Sri Nochur Venkatraman, as an acharya. Now he is saying, you're unhappy. You are unhappy because you do not conform to your stage of life here. And then he talks about ashramas. At 50, you're at the peak of your professional career, but that peak is about to fall because it is time for you to move on to the next stage. So now it is time to move to something else, right? And most people live in the wrong ashrama, according to this guru and this article. And therefore, they are out of sync with their own realities. They want to have sex like they were 20. They want to have money like they're 50. They want to live a life at the wrong time, at their particular stage of life. And that is what's wrong with the West. And so, you see what's going on? I mean, I'm not trying to rehearse this article. I'm trying to illustrate that here's a prestigious journal with a prestigious author writing an article about ideas that are directly from the Hindu tradition, right? That's what we want. We want to seed the world with our ideas. Why? Because these ideas, when you write one article, you pop this thought into somebody else's head, they write another article. And then 20 ideas later, somebody says that this is interesting enough for me to do a whole PhD thesis on it, right? Then somebody does a PhD thesis, and their article, their thesis is quoted by other PhD people. And 20, 30, 40 years later, policymakers are paying attention to this, right? They now have a new language to think about quality of life. You remember the craze for gross national happiness, surely. And this came from the king of Bhutan, who said, I'm not going to measure GDP, I'm going to measure GNH or whatever, right? That was an idea. And it's shaping his society, but everybody else is influenced by it, right? And to quote that very nice restaurant lady in this American movie, When Harry Met Sally, if someone looks exceptionally happy, people are going to say, I'll have what they're having, right? And so if we are able to be happy, people will come to us and ask, what the heck is wrong with you? Why are you so happy? Why is there a sense of bliss around you? Why are you always exuding positivity, right? We want what you have, but you don't have the language to transmit. So even if you're happy, you can't talk. And now we need a language. And that's the project that we're coming to. Let me now talk you through what the team has been working on. And then and I'm done with my monologue. I appreciate your cooperation. And now I will be happy to start taking your inputs and hand raises and so on. So here's what we did so far. 2 years ago, we've been working on this 2 years. Our objective is to answer, to calibrate, to have a Western frame with Indian ideas inside it around how to answer this question, how you're doing. And we want to have published and publishable articles. But let me just get to what we did. We did a lot of research. We talked at length many times over. All those recordings are available. All the articles we wrote are available. And they're going to be the base upon which this year's work will begin. Now, some of the ideas are, we understand that quality of life isn't a static thing. It isn't either as if Elon Musk is now worth 200 billion and he has now reached the state of permanent quality of life. As in, this is it. No more happiness, no more sadness. He's just in a state of bliss. Isn't the case. It is a dynamic and energetic state of harmony. Of course, quality of life when you're dead is very, very stable, but you're dead. Energetic because it's always moving. And it's moving between 4 states or 4 objectives, which is Dharma, Artha, and Kama, and Moksha. These are our findings. I'm happy to debate these out with you. The search of this quality of life eventually will lead to, and indeed should begin with, this idea of Ananda, a causeless enjoyment, bliss, which, the word Ananda does not have an English counterpart. We're just going to have to use the word Ananda and hope to describe it to people in the West. But a feeling of infinite time, lightness, feeling of the self, all of that. Melodies. All right. Okay, so the search for Ananda and the beginning search from Ananda are both part of quality of life. I'm now going to just flip through the pages to give you a sense of what we found. We found that desires, the fulfillment of desires is an important point, but it is the end of desire that we seek after. What we realized was that it wasn't that we wanted to fulfill our desires. So many horror stories, if you read people's narratives, so many people have said that their dreams came true and they didn't know if they were in a nightmare, right? There are so many, I've clipped away a story about lottery winners who said they won the lottery and it was the worst possible thing to happen to their life. Why? Because it turns out it's not enough to desire it. You want to end desire, and the end of desire can come through shreyas and prayas, good, willful, and or pleasurable means. I mean, good and or pleasurable means, and you know which one is better. All right. Being in the self, swastha, and purnata, it is a search for fullness that we want. By eating more, by consuming more, by grabbing more, we want to become full. There's a sense of incompleteness that we're trying to go after and finish. And that sense of purnata is what we seek after. We want to be in a state of santosha. There's so much said in our tradition about the state of santosha. And of course, there's so much said in the West by, of course, the great philosopher Mick Jagger, that he can't get no satisfaction. No one can get no satisfaction. People seem to be perpetually dissatisfied. Why? Because they don't know the first thing about satisfaction, that it cannot be achieved by material means. All right, moving on. Dharma is a sense of connection. It is a sense of belonging. And this lack of dharma is, in my language, the foundation for loneliness. That's what we're dealing with. So dharma is connectedness, and the opposite of dharma is loneliness in this definition. We already talked about artha. This is the Gulab Jamun paradox. I'm not going to talk about it. Swadharma. We realize that each of us have our own inner state, our inner constitution. And to be in accordance with our inner constitution is to be in a better, higher quality of life. If you're out of your inner state, if you're out of sync with the inner state, as the Bhagavad Gita said, it is a very bhayava, very fearsome state to be in. So what is my Swadharma? How do we understand that? Right? And then surrender. It turns out control and surrender, losers always surrender at the end, and a winner surrenders for upfront. So this is another one of our findings. Moksha, we already talked about freedom. The need for opposites and to go beyond the pair of the opposites. The interesting thing that we found in our discussions was that the West hates paradoxes and likes to resolve paradoxes in favor of one or the other. And it all comes down to this underlying thinking that there is no God but God. The sense that reality must be broken down into one version. Truth can be constricted into one truth is the problem that the West feels. And almost everything useful and interesting comes from being beyond the pairs of opposites. So in the Hindu tradition, we have the phrase dvandvatit, beyond the pairs of opposites. And that too has a link to quality of life, because if you have one and not the other, then you don't have a good state of being. All right. We already talked about time, but time has so many layers. It's a very interesting non-Jan thing. This is a joke, which is it's an onion-like thing. The more you peel, the more tears there are in this case, because time, we talked about stages of life. We talked about the perception of time, and we talked about right now, atha. And in fact, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra begins with the word atha. Atha has almost the same stature as the word om, as a very holy and sacred symbol of everything. Why? Because now everything is now. This moment is the only true moment there is. Everything else is in the past or the future. So Atha, how do we learn to be in the moment is another thing we talked about. And then we talked about stories. Very interestingly, Maya Angelou said the universe is made of stories. And the interesting thing we realized that in the Hindu tradition, you look at the Mahabharata, it's a collection of stories, because how we think about ourselves is all about framing. And framing is all about stories. And the problem is we have a narrower set of stories that we live with these days. And because we don't have a rich range of stories, we tend to not be able to frame our context in the right manner. And framing matters everywhere. So stories matter. And so there's a lot. And so you can reshape, you can improve quality of life by changing the story, the underlying narrative of life. And finally, of course, we talked about the field of view, and at HCI, we talk about this all the way. And this is another way to look at the idea of quality of life. So I'm going to pause here. You see, we've done a lot of work. There's a lot of written articles. There's a whole bunch of articles we've written. You can see the names of the people that wrote it. These articles are available as base material. What we want is published and publishable articles. The way you publish, of course, is to write something which is compelling, which is filled with research, insight, and it brings a new perspective to the reader. And we want to write high quality prose. We want to write high quality content that you will be proud of, your children will be proud of, and many years later, you can still point to it and say, you know what, that idea that you're seeing in society, I wrote about this 15 years ago. That's what we want with this $1 project. You work independently. I mean, you work with me, but I'm learning this as much as you are. So in that sense, we work together. We will form groups of 4 just to make it easy for us to engage with each other and talk. But we're going to try to write our own articles. Last year, we had 2 doctors working on the project, and their project was to look at authentic data, just source authentic data. You could source data by talking to people. You can source data by sending them forms. You can source data by gathering narratives and saying, how are you feeling? How do you feel? How does this make you feel? How have your feeling improved over time? And so on and so forth. Those are things that you can actually research, and that data will shape future research as well. So I'm done describing the $1 project, and I hope you get a good sense of the breadth of the work we want to do in this particular topic around quality of life. So questions and comments. If you're thrilled, I want to hear it. If you're bored by it, I want to hear that as well.
Gaurav ji, Riddhi here. I'm in India right now, like pitch dark, so I can't turn on my camera. Sorry for that. I loved your idea. I used to write my blogs on the Facebook page in the past, but again, I would say lack of time, or I would say poor management of time, as you would call it. I have not been writing anymore. But I feel like this has been my passion.
You've given yourself 60 hours to write, so you can now write.
It's my passion, actually. It feels like something has to come from the heart to express myself fully. And this $1 project seems to be very fit for that passion. Not only that, I mean, I'm thirsty for the right knowledge at the moment. And this $1 project probably will help me get access to the right kind of knowledge that I'm looking for and put that in the words that I understand for future generations to come in. Beautiful. And I think I would like to begin with maybe 16 sanskaras. I would love to learn about that and would want to put it in the words that I understand from the knowledge that I gain from somewhere.
Sure. And the 16 sanskaras in our the way HCI looks at it, they play into the passage of time itself, which is they mark the passage of time from before birth to long after death. And that's an important way of bringing a perspective to life. So how life is enriched through these 16 samskaras and brings a higher quality of life would be a really interesting project. I applaud you for coming up with that. Vinji, your hand is up.
Yeah. Sorry, I also want to share one more thing, Gauravji, before you move on to the next one. like I have a lot of interest in past life regressions or past lives and how they shape our today's lives. And I'm also a therapist in the same field. So does it help? Like, can we bring any topic from there? Is it sensible for the people to read such kind of stuff, or what is your take on it?
So the as long as the Hindu fold, I mean, obviously, past life regression begins to become new agey, and again,
Mm-hmm.
new age is fine. We're okay to cover that. We just don't. We don't want to make it so hard for mainstream publications to pick it up, because they're not going to pick it up until. But if you look at just the idea of reincarnation, the fact that
Yeah,
our past impressions carry into modern life, is a fair take,
correct.
which is to
Okay.
say that Hindus believe in reincarnation. There's some scientific proof for it. We're not going to get into it. But the interesting thing
Mm.
is, we inherently like some things and some situations more than the other. There are people that we meet that we feel that they're familiar to us in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those we infer to be connections from the past, and then we work from that. And so you can couch that in modern terms without feeling that somebody will
Got
complain
it.
about it.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Vinji.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much. It was nice to hear what you said earlier about the quality of life. I'm been very curious about this as well. And my background is I'm a social scientist, and currently working on an abstract for a international medical journal on a topic about helping people with people who have special needs background. And then we're trying to study about how their life could be improved from looking from the different perspective of people working with them. So I'm working on the abstract at the moment of trying to understand the people that care for them, like carers and support workers, on how to improve their quality of life in terms of professional work they do, so that these are the people that are facing that burnout every day and the stress that they go through looking after people who need special needs. But I'm also interested to know the quality of life. When you said earlier, when people ask you, in Australia, it's very common, customary, people ask you, anywhere you go, how are you doing and how are you? And then you quickly turn around and say, I'm fine, but actually you're not fine. Yeah. So I realized that myself, I have been in that situation so long that you don't have enough time to turn around and say, hey, I don't think so. I'm doing well today, but I'm not sure what they're going to say. They're going to say, oh, how can we help you, or something like that. So I'm also curious about that kind of research and to how to clarify what is quality of life and how to really understand when someone says, how you doing and how you feeling, and how to react to that. Is there a deeper understanding to that, a deeper meaning, and how to find out that?
Yeah.
Because in reality, we also must understand that as a person, we are faced with a lot of things every day, and we go through a lot of things every day, and we must not forget that death is always next to us. Somebody very special to me told me recently that don't forget, whatever you do, whatever you are doing, and whatever your daily life, think carefully on what you do and how you're going to spend your time, because death is just around the corner. You'll never know. Yeah. So that is really a deep thought that someone had said to me recently. So I would be more interested to know what is going to happen after this conversation, and how can I contribute in research, in assisting whatever work you're doing at the moment.
No, this is great. First, I applaud you for the work that you're doing on your research abstract. And this is a great place to talk about quality of life. The beauty is, when you publish, even if the topic is something else, you're going to, if you cover a way to understand the inner experience of other people, and that becomes part of your abstract, then it's something for somebody else to work on, because then they can take that piece and expand that out and cite your thinking. So that's beautiful what you're doing. Plus, it is truly important to understand the inner experience of both special needs people as well as people that provide care for them. And I think it'll be a worthwhile endeavor. On your second question of how to answer the question of how are you doing, that is in fact the central challenge for this society. We don't understand how we are doing ourselves, and so no one can help us improve it. We can't improve a society where we don't know how we're doing, right? We are so disintermediated from our own selves that we don't know how we're doing. And so that's the challenge that we're working on. Hopefully by the end of this, when we're done, maybe by the end of my life, people will be able to calibrate and say, you know what, I'm doing 3-6-1 or something. And then you figure out, okay, this is a good state of being, right? Or not good, who knows, right? We don't know what the future might hold, but it'll be interesting to change the answer from I'm fine, thank you, to something more nuanced and interesting. Thank you, Vinji. Ushaji.
Gauravji,
Go ahead, Mahalakshmi ji. Go ahead. Somebody else wanted to speak?
Mahalakshmi ji, go
not
ahead.
at all. Not at all. I just was commenting on the side.
Gauravji, this is Nirupama. Can I speak something?
Ushaji's hand is up, so I'll request her to speak first, and then Nirupama ji, you next, and then Nisha ji.
Sure.
Ushaji, go right ahead.
Sure.
Okay. So this curious thing came to me when I was thinking about like rebirth, right? And I was I'm not going to pretend that I have any solid knowledge, but then it was just my thought process that if you look at it as a journey that's from the eternity, right? From the no beginning to you reach God, right? You surrender. So, and then it's all these dots you could look at as all your lifetimes. It could be millions of lifetimes. So, and all of them, it's very unique to you. That path is very unique to you. And then you go zigzag, you go backward, forward, sideways, you take a, twist, you take a turn, you go high, low, whatever. But then, so yours is so to build your quality of life, you have to recognize that and see in this lifetime how you make it happen that you go to the next life on a plateau. Does that make sense? And I want to expand that a lot more with research and everything.
I like what you're saying, which is how to improve quality of life in a future life. Is very interesting.
No, not a future life. Not a future life. How to prepare for the future lives and enjoy quality of life here.
Sure,
it's kind of it's a chain link, and you have to make sure. I mean, you're given this chain. You don't know the link before and the after. How do you solidify this one?
Yeah. A very interesting topic, especially because if you join it to people thinking about the end of life, whether they are at the end of life or just thinking about it. The Hindu tradition has a lot to say. I'm reminded of the story of Jada Bharata in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where at the moment of his death, he was thinking about his little deer foal, that was out in the jungle. And so he was going to have to come back as a deer in his next birth. And so the birth after the deer, he was born as a human, but he decided, I'm going to be quiet this time. No taking chances. I'm not going to speak with anyone. So he was Jada Bharat. So he was born, but as he decided to stay quiet, and people thought he was just an imbecile, Jada. And then, of course, later, he spoke. But the point was that Hindu tradition has a lot to say about death and beyond.
Yeah, and to blend in, like your good karma, bad karma, right? Sure. And why they say you have to expend your good karma, that means even good karma has desires built into it. Sure. And God wants to be absolutely sure that you don't have anything lingering, and you don't come to him and then regret, oh my God, I didn't sing 2 more songs. I didn't come, shoot 5 more baskets. You don't have anything lingering, right? I didn't help 10 more people. You say, yes, I'm done. And then you go to him. I want to take it to that level.
It'll be great. It'll be fantastic, Ushaji. Ushaji, by the way, is of course, the associate dean. He runs the program, but she was so thrilled by this topic. She said, "I want to work on it," and so I said, "Have at it, please take it away." Nirupamaji, were you next? I know Nishaji, you're up after, right?
Yes, yes. I don't know if you can hear me properly
We
because
can
I'm
hear you
in a
and see
busy
you.
place.
Yes.
Thank you. So Gauravji, first, I have a question. So this project will like take place instead of the community project, 60 hours?
Yeah, I mean, 60 hours is a rough benchmark. The idea is to come out with a research article. You could take less or more. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is that we publish, you write something that is publishable, and then we build on it. Yeah.
Okay, good. So it will be my first trial to write something like this because I am more used to write scientific data and experiments. I was thinking, I have actually come across with one of our family members. They were going to psychologists and actually they were not able to describe their emotions. When psychologists are prompting them to describe how they felt in a certain circumstances and they couldn't. So which seemed to be quite interesting. And I have been thinking this is very common with, especially with the Hindu population, that they are not able, we are from very young age to and be good in everything and hide our emotions. So I am not sure at this stage how I'm going to approach it, but something like that, so that we can be honest to ourselves and honest to our families and friends, so they also get a right perspective of us. Something, and I would appreciate if you can just help me in shaping this up, and then I can start it.
Sure. We can work on this as a group, and last time we worked as a group, it was very fruitful because I think together we come up with better ideas and by challenging each other. So yeah, and the theme sounds fantastic, Nirupamaji. And you don't need to not write in a scientific way. I encourage you to write very scientifically. That's important.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Thank
you.
Nishaji, you're next. Yeah, you have to unmute. Nishaji, we can't hear you.
Sorry.
Sure.
Thank you. So for me, it's in some ways a bit challenging to sort of focus on exactly which area of the $1 project or the quality of life I should focus on. And I think part of it is because I am a scientist, so I'm used to very evidence-based ideas and so on. But there's certain areas that I've thought about. One is, cancer care, palliative care. The other area that I see where there's a tremendous need and a lot of question that comes to my mind is the workforce and the way people work together. Work life seems to be very stressful for people, and lots of things go on, lots of things don't work, interpersonal relationships, and people spend a lot of time there. So I was wondering whether there was any merit in exploring our Eastern culture to look at what is available there, because I have to say that I can't immediately think of any particular branch where you can go to immediately as a source of information for those type of contexts, but I may not be properly informed. So that's one possibility, but I was also, wanting to have a look at where your work is at this point in time, because I'm not entirely familiar with it, to generate more ideas.
Sure.
And whether there are other works in motion that could benefit if I contributed to that. So for me, the session was just to try and get a better sense and understanding of where I could possibly go with my skill set and the resources that I have available to me in healthcare and work.
Yeah, you raise very amazing points, Nishaji. Thank you for those. First thing is, we want to be evidence-based and scientific, even though we're using, language of the self. And so your contribution in helping us be more evidence-based in the articles we write will be very, very important in that sense. The other is work-based stress. Work-based stress is a very rich theme, and I've talked about it a lot. I'm happy to talk endlessly on that topic. There's a lot to be covered there, so we can talk about it. But you have to pick one. You can pick anyone you like. But if you could teach us evidence-based thinking, that itself will be a great contribution to all of us that are writing. All right, thank you, Madhuriji.
Namaste, everyone. It's very exciting to join you all today. And like you all, I like to do a project as well that help everyone. And I like to do regarding health. And I don't know if there is any resources that we can have access to. And I'm thinking more because I'm in nutrition field to work around the basics of Hindu way of eating, which is like, we know sattvic food is good, but everyone doesn't fit into it. But if there is a resources that can give us like a background support, and then I would like to work on that aspect because I can give scientific evidence nutritionally with the latest publications to support what I believe in, what we know the culturally 2000 years ago written in our Vedas or in the Sanskrit sayings.
Sure, yeah, that'll be great. We have a lot of Ayurveda people on our Sangha. So if you need someone to partner with, we have a lot of people that you can work with.
Yes, please. And if anyone likes to join me in the same topic, and if we can form a group, I'll be very happy to join a group.
I'm pretty sure.
Thank you. Namaste.
Okay, who did we miss? Did we miss anyone? Nageshji, you have any questions or comments? I know you've texted me directly, so I'm happy to talk now. And Nirupamaji, your question is how many words? Published articles are between, I think, 2,000 to 6,000 words, depending on where you publish. So, try to keep it, we'll try to be 3,000 words plus minus. Typically, one chapter is 3,000 words. So, which is meaty enough. It's very broad. Yeah.
All right. The another thing I was thinking, nobody is taking up even yoga thing. So maybe I might consider that is my other option, something related with yoga and health, something like that.
Sure, yeah, you can propose that. iPad G, yeah, your hand is up. Whoever's iPad, I don't know who iPad G is. Okay, I'll ask Geeta Ji until iPad G figures out who they are. Oh yeah, you've unmuted. Fantastic. Please go ahead, iPad G.
Sorry, it's Nilima.
Nilima Ji, okay.
Namaste. Sorry, my video is not working.
No worries, it's all good. Yeah.
So I'm not sure what I'm going to work on. I haven't really written anything so far, just doing some little question and answers on portals like Quora and all.
Sure.
So I would like to write on some topic I'm interested in, like some philosophy, like culture and tradition, rituals, and like that. So if there is anything, I can pick something from those. I would be happy to write.
Okay. Good news is I can't give you a topic. Good news for me, that is. You have to pick a topic, because then you get to write about it. I can talk you through all the research and everything that you read. My guidance is very simple. Learn to tune into your heart, and then go through the text. Something will spark in your heart when the right topic flips through, and that's the topic you pick up. That's just the way I make all my decisions. So I can send you all the research, all the recordings, listen to it and see what sounds interesting. And then that's the thing to work on.
That sounds good.
Sure. Geeta Ji?
Yes. Namaste, Nandkishore ji. I am out of my mind by listening all the things and everybody's ideas. But to support with Vinji's and Usha ji's, with regard to the bad karmas and good karmas to add to the water, I got some ideas with by I just remembered my grandmom. She used to tell, our if we are having good life or good things in this life, she used to talk that you might have offered more flower to God in previous birth. That's why she used to talk. So I remembered that one. So my interesting topic to even take to the next level about bhakti yoga and how the Navavida Bhakti and chanting mantras and how it is affecting us, how it is helpful to improve our quality of life. And other than that, there are so many devotees or so many, I can say so many bhaktas or so many saints, when they are expressing their experiences about invocation of chakras, different experiences, how they perceived Saksha, maybe about how they say, they used to say, I saw God, I talked to God, and how to react with them. Because instead of suddenly disconnecting their talk or suddenly discouraging them, maybe they are younger to us or maybe they are elder to us, how to perceive their thoughts, how to take it and how to put it into the words. Sometimes I have experienced talking to them, or even I don't know how to react with them. And even my thoughts also, or my experience also, maybe I may not be expressing with others, or is it okay to express with others? So I don't know whether it is a scientifically, it is how to prove such things. So I just want to put it in writing. So I need your guidance in that one.
Sure. There's one of my favorite teachers is he's not a psychologist. I mean, he teaches neuroscience and psychology, behavioral psychology at Stanford, Robert Sapolsky. And one of his, he's a fantastic teacher. When I grow up, I want to be teaching like him. That's the way I think about him. And the interesting thing was, he says this, he's an atheist. He says it irritates him, it bothers him no end to know that religious people are happier than non-religious people. He can't explain why. And so what you're suggesting is that bhakti yoga leads to higher quality of life. I agree with you 100%. The challenge for us is to write it in a way that people can understand. And you might have to pair up with somebody on this group to write, but it'll be a very important topic. I routinely send all my friends and my relatives to go to a kirtan or a sankirtan for this exact reason. I think it improves quality of life in significant ways that we all have access to. All right, good. I appreciate, I promised to finish the call in 1 hour and we're at the top of the hour. Is there any other question or comment that people have? I will send this recording to everyone and you have time to think about it. What I'd like to do is for having you propose to me what your topic is, and that way you get to think about it. And I'm happy to show up on a call, at any time you want, or as many times as you want, and discuss it. I will make available to you all the recordings from previous sessions, so you have all the time to go through them as well. All right. With that, I wish you, it's Purnima outside. Please go out and enjoy the beautiful moon and beautiful time of the year. And I wish you happy holidays and a happy new year as well. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Gauravji.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gauravji.
Thank you.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Ji.